Honorable Adjudicator, do you know what the biggest graduation gift for university students in the United States is today? Not their dream job, but a collective debt bill worth $1.70 trillion that has crippled the economic future of the entire generation. To date, the proposition team wants to bring that financially time bomb into Indonesia. This motion is built upon the fundamentally flawed intention. Student loans are not a solution. They are merely a cosmetic illusion that transfer the constitutional responsibility of the state onto the shoulder of working-class students. Honorable House, let us face reality with Indonesia today. Indonesia today we struggle with a low minimum wage and a high rate of educated unemployed, and forcing students to go into a debt for education will only create one thing: a new generation structurally trapped in poverty. They will graduate not to build the nation, but also to work endlessly just to repay ever going on the bank interest. The root cause behind this motion is the widening gap between the high cost of higher education and the weak purchasing power of society, especially the middle class. Higher education is meant to be the state instrument to educate the life of the nation. Once a student loan system is implemented, education shifts from being the public right into the personal business transaction. Student loan has treated students not as national asset that deserve to be educated, but as doctors who generate profit for financially institutions. Students from wealthy families graduate debt-free and can immediately invest, pursue entrepreneurship, or take career risks. Meanwhile, poor students graduate with a heavy financial burden, forcing them to accept any job available simply to survive and pay installment. And this widens social inequality instead of solving it. Secondly, from a practical perspective, Indonesian economic and labor markets are simply not ready for such a system. Student loans may function in developing countries because they have stronger job absorption and more stable wage. In Indonesia, however, university graduates already face high unemployment due to a mismatch between academic measure and industrial demands. There is also the issue of wage stagnation. The starting salary of many Indonesian graduates, especially outside Jakarta, is often equal to or even below the regional minimum wage. Once the income is cut by the loan repayment and interest, graduates left without enough money for basic necessity, saving, or even for the future security. Furthermore, this policy creates the threat of massive default and default burden if graduates fail to repay because they are unemployment or because they are underpaid. Who bears the cost? If the government guarantees these loans, then the national budget will eventually suffer from the covering bad debt. If private banks absorb the losses, young Indonesia will have damaged the credit records and preventing them from accessing mortgage or business capital in the future. As the opposition team, we do not simply reject the motion without offering solution. Student loans are merely a downstream superficial fix, forcing people into debt to pay expensive tuition. The real solution lies upstream, is that lowering and auditing university tuition fees so they remain rational and affordable without requiring debt. Indonesia already have successful example for the educational endowment programs such as LDPD and KIP for the university. The solution is to expand scholarship quotas and funding through public investment, not to replace them with commercial loan scheme. Now, the proposition team argues that the national budget is limited and the government cannot fund free education for everyone through scholarship. But if the government claims the budget is insufficient to fund education directly, then where will it suddenly find the money to rescue the system when the mass default occurs among unemployed graduates? The proposition team suffer from a flawed sense of priorities. Education is not merely expenditure, it is a long-term national investment. Refusing fund to education through the state budget while simultaneously legalizing commercial debt scheme is simply the state abandoning its responsibility. If the government can finance massive infrastructure mega projects, why does it suddenly ask its citizens to borrow money for the intellectual future for the nation? The proposition team also argued that the middle class family are expected to pay tuition independently from the start. However, this assumption is ignore economic realities. Rising living costs, inflation, and daily necessity already consume most middle class income. Many middle class families are trapped in a vulnerable position, like too rich to qualify for scholarship, yet too poor to comfortably afford high tuition fees. Although the tuition subsidy system is designed so wealthier families pay more to support poorer students. In practice, the classification process is often unfair because leaving the middle class carrying the heaviest burden. Additionally, unlike developed nation, Indonesia's labor market is still dominated by the informal sector. Educated unemployment remains high, burdening students with debt before they can even secure stable employment is reckless and dangerous. It is risk triggering a mass default crisis that could eventually burden the state of budget itself. The United States already proves that student loans can be failed catastrophically, trapping millions of citizens in debt well into the middle age. Giving student loan to poor students is therefore a clear form of social injustice. Poor communication do not need debt that follow them after graduation. They need grants and scholarship that genuinely help to break the cycle of the poverty. As the opposition team, we instead propose a profit-sharing agreement model, which is fundamentally different from the student loan. Under this system, students do not borrow money with the accumulating interest. Instead, they study either tuition fee or with heavily reduced fee. In return, after graduation and securing employment above a certain income threshold, they contribute a small percentage of their income, perhaps 5 to 10% for a fixed period of time. This system is not debt-based. There is no compounding interest. If graduates are unemployed or earn low wage, they are not forced to pay. The financial risk shift away from the student and toward funding provider or university, which then creates incentive for university to ensure their graduates secure decent jobs quickly. We also propose expanding scholarship, especially for the vulnerable middle class. The government can create a new scholarship category or like a KAP plus scheme aimed at the middle income families who are not classified as extremely poor but still cannot afford high tuition fees. This solution directly targets the root of problem faced by the middle class without involving private financial institutions or trapping young people in long-term debt. As the opposition team, we firmly reject the adoption of the student loans in Indonesia. This system is merely transformed educational into a long-term personal debt for young people. Given Indonesia's economic uncertainty, student loans risk creating a debt-trapped generation rather than generation capability of live. That is why the proposition team has fundamentally failed in defending this motion, and we stand proudly with as the opposition team.